Do you ever have a moment where reality shifts in a way that you can't fully comprehend? Where something so impossible happens right in front of witnesses that you almost convince yourself you imagined it? I had that moment, and it changed everything about how I understand safety and trust, and the idea that your home is supposed to be your sanctuary. My name is Michael, and I'm a high school English teacher. I teach at Roosevelt High School in suburban Denver, Colorado. Before the pandemic, I had a typical teaching life. I would go to school. I would teach my classes in person. I would come home. I would grade papers. It was routine and predictable, and I liked it that way. But then March 2020 happened, and like everyone else, I had to adapt to teaching remotely. I set up a home office in my spare bedroom. I invested in a good webcam and a microphone. I created a space where I could do my job effectively from home. By the time we went back to hybrid learning in 2021, I had gotten used to teaching from home for at least part of the week. I had 4 classes that met virtually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The other 3 classes met in person. It was an odd schedule, but it worked. On the days I was teaching remotely, I would stay home. I would set up my laptop at my desk. I would log in to the Zoom meeting about 5 minutes early. I would teach my class, and then I would be done. It was simple. It was efficient. It was what I was doing on Thursday, October 7th. I teach junior and senior level English. My Thursday classes are Junior English and AP Literature. The Junior English class is the bigger of the two, about 28 students. AP Lit is smaller, maybe 18 students. The Zoom class that day was Junior English. It was second period, from 10 to 10:55 a.m. I had done this exact class dozens of times. I knew the routine. I had my lesson plan ready. We were doing a unit on narrative structure, and I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation about hero's journey in literature. The class was scheduled to start at 10 a.m. My home office is in the spare bedroom of my apartment. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment that I rent. It's a relatively new complex, built maybe 15 years ago. The apartment is nice enough, nothing fancy, but clean and functional. The bedroom that I use as an office has a desk, a chair, my computer setup, a small bookshelf with my reference materials, and a closet. Just a regular closet. The kind with sliding doors that you pull open. Nothing unusual about it. The closet is behind me when I'm sitting at my desk. If I were to turn around in my chair, I could reach the closet in maybe 3 steps. I logged into Zoom at 9:57 a.m. I checked my camera angle. I adjusted my lighting. I made sure the PowerPoint was ready to share. Everything was set. The students started logging in. By 10 a.m., I had about 20 students in the meeting. A few more trickled in over the first minute or two. I launched into my introduction. I was talking about the hero's journey as a narrative structure. I was explaining how Joseph Campbell's monomyth theory applies to modern literature. I was in the middle of a sentence about Luke Skywalker's journey in Star Wars when I noticed something odd. One of my students, a girl named Alex, had a strange expression on her face. She was looking at her screen, but she also seemed to be looking at something else. Her eyes had widened. She looked alarmed, but she wasn't saying anything. She wasn't unmuting to ask a question or to interrupt. She was just staring. I assumed she was experiencing some kind of technical issue. Maybe her video was frozen. Maybe she was having internet trouble. I kept talking. I kept explaining the hero's journey, and I waited to see if she would unmute and say something. Then another student's face changed. This time it was a boy named Marcus. His eyes got wide. His expression shifted from casual attention to something like shock. He leaned closer to his screen, and I started to feel a weird sensation in my stomach. Something was wrong. I could feel it, but I didn't know what it was. I asked if everyone could see the presentation clearly. I asked if anyone had technical issues. My voice was steady, but my heart was starting to beat faster. Alex unmuted. She said, "Mr. Patterson, I think someone is behind you." And immediately about 5 other students unmuted and confirmed what she was seeing. They were all saying the same thing. "There's someone behind you. There's someone in your closet. We can see them in your camera." I froze. I didn't move. I didn't turn around. I asked the students to describe what they were seeing. Alex said, "There's like a person. In your closet. Behind the door. We can see them on the camera." My entire body went rigid. My hands were shaking. I was sitting at my desk in my home office with my back to my closet, teaching a class of 28 junior high school students on Zoom. And those students were telling me that there was a person in my closet. A person who would be directly behind me if I turned around. A person who had been there, apparently, the entire time I had been teaching. A person who was within arm's reach of me. I told the students to stay on the call. I told them to call 911 if they couldn't reach me, and then I stood up slowly. Very slowly. I took a breath, and I turned around to face the closet. The sliding doors were slightly ajar, just slightly, maybe an inch or two. Enough for someone to see out, enough for the camera to pick up a silhouette, and I could see it. I could see a shape in there, a person-chick shape standing completely still in the darkness of the closet. I didn't think. I just reacted. I grabbed the closet doors and I yanked them open. And there was a man standing in my closet, completely still, completely silent, just standing there in the darkness surrounded by my clothes and my storage boxes. He was in his 30s. He was wearing dark clothes. He had a backpack on his shoulders. And when I opened the closet door, he didn't run. He didn't attack. He just looked at me with an expression of absolute shock that he had been discovered. I screamed. I actually screamed. And I pushed him. I shoved him hard. He stumbled backward and fell onto the floor of the closet. I slammed the door shut. I ran to my desk. I grabbed my phone. I called 911. I told the dispatcher that there was a man in my closet, that he had been hiding there during my Zoom class, that I lived in an apartment complex and I didn't know how he had gotten in. The dispatcher told me to leave the apartment. She told me not to engage with the man any further. She told me that police were on the way. I could hear sirens already. I ran out of my apartment without even grabbing my keys or my wallet. I stood in the hallway outside my door. I was shaking. I was trying to breathe. I was trying to process what had just happened. The police arrived within minutes. 3 patrol cars. Officers came running into my apartment with their weapons drawn. There was a moment of tension where I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't see into my bedroom from where I was standing. I could just hear the officers moving through my apartment. And then I heard them saying that they had the suspect in custody. They had found him still in my closet. He had made no attempt to escape or to resist. He was just standing there waiting. They arrested him right there in my apartment. They handcuffed him and led him out past me into the hallway. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything. He just walked past with his head down. I stood there in the hallway and I watched as they put him in a police car. And it wasn't until he was in the car that I really started to shake. Not just physically shake. Emotionally shake. Psychologically shatter. The police investigated my apartment. They found that the man, whose name was Gregory Torres, had broken into my apartment 2 days earlier. He had gotten in through a window that had a broken lock. No one at the apartment complex had reported it. He had been living in my closet for 2 days. 2 days. He had access to my entire apartment. He had been in my kitchen. He had potentially been in my bedroom while I was sleeping. He had been in my bedroom while I was sleeping. He had been in my bathroom. He had just been living there, waiting for something. The police found evidence that he had been planning something. They found a knife in his backpack. They found my address written down multiple times in a notebook he was carrying. They found photographs of me printed out. He had taken screenshots from my social media. He had printed them out and carried them with him. The police didn't tell me everything, but they told me enough to understand that this wasn't random. This was targeted. This was planned. He had chosen me. He had chosen me. He had studied me. He had broken into my home, and he had hidden in my closet, and he had waited. The only reason he was discovered is because my students could see him on the camera feed. The only reason I didn't come home from work one day to find something catastrophic waiting for me is because of an accident of technology. Because my camera angle happened to pick up just enough of the closet to make his silhouette visible. If that camera angle had been different by even a few degrees, if he had hidden somewhere else, if my students hadn't been paying attention, if they hadn't said anything, if I had simply closed my laptop and gone about my day without turning around, I don't know what would have happened. Gregory Torres was arrested and charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and carrying a concealed weapon with intent. He went to trial. He was convicted. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. At his sentencing hearing, the judge asked him why he had done it, why he had targeted me, why he had broken into my home. Gregory Torres said that he had been watching me for months, that he had seen me teaching my classes on YouTube, where I had uploaded some of my lectures. He said that he had become obsessed with me, that he wanted to meet me, that he didn't intend to hurt me, that he just wanted to talk to me. When the judge asked him about the knife, he said it was for protection. He said he was afraid of how I might react if he just approached me. I took a leave of absence from teaching. I couldn't go back to the classroom. I couldn't stand in front of a group of students and try to teach literature when I knew that one of those students might be someone who was planning to hurt me. I moved out of my apartment. I couldn't stay there. Every time I walked into my bedroom, I saw him standing in the closet. Every time I tried to sleep, I thought about the fact that he had been in my home for 48 hours, that he could have done anything, that he had chosen to wait for something, and I still don't know what that something was. I eventually went back to teaching, but it was different. I taught in person. I refused to teach remotely ever again. I didn't want my students seeing into my home. I didn't want that vulnerability. I moved into a house instead of an apartment. I installed a security system. I changed all my passwords. I stopped uploading my lectures to YouTube. I became hyper-aware of who was watching me, who might be paying attention to me, who might be planning something. And I think about Alex a lot, the student who first noticed that something was wrong, who saw the silhouette in my closet and said something. If she hadn't been paying attention, if she hadn't spoken up, I don't know where I would be. Sometimes I think about the alternate timeline where she doesn't say anything, where I finish my class, where I close my laptop and turn around to find Gregory Torres stepping out of my closet with a knife in his hand. That timeline is close. It's close enough that I can feel it. And every single day, I'm grateful that we live in the timeline where she said something.